I'm Cole Haddon, and this is 5 a.m. Real Talk, a 5 a.m. StoryTalk plog. Welcome back, Story Talkers. How's life been treating you? Today's episode of 5 a.m. Real Talk is going to be a bit of a wild one, I expect, judging by these notes I've written down to guide me through our chat. What I mean is it's going to seem a bit all over the place, but I think it'll come together by the end, I hope. I'm going to get personal up front, talk about some bad and some very good things in my life this year, then move on to my thoughts on two versions of Frankenstein films I recently saw for the first time. One of them, Guillermo del Toro's, of course. Intergenerational trauma, the creative process as a form of reinvention, and Madonna are all on the itinerary too. Now let's start with, I'm still working feverishly on this pilot script commission, ever closer to the first draft finish line. Thanksgiving is going to interrupt in a few days, but it'll be turned in by the Christmas break. Speaking of Thanksgiving, it's always a weird holiday for people who grew up in America, but no longer live there. For most of my life, it was, a loud, boisterous affair filled with family and roast turkey, maybe like yours. Very Norman Rockwell, I think, with a German immigrant's spin on it all. But after my wife and I abandoned the country back in 2017, it became one of the only traditions we held on to from our lives there. First in Southeast London, then Oxfordshire. Then after we moved to Australia in 2021, where my mom was from, we continued the tradition. Thanksgiving is even weirder here in Australia, where the seasons are inverted and there's much more of a cultural antipathy to American customs like this. Halloween, for example, it just produces endless whinging from people who hate American culture infecting Oz. But my wife and I, we don't care. Next weekend, when we do celebrate, it's going to be turkey and stuffing and green bean casserole and mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce and pumpkin pie and maybe even a pecan pie. You can't get enough dessert at the holidays. What are you guys going to get up to if you celebrate? Are you looking forward to finding out which of your family members aren't just racist and fascist, but now also think pedophilia isn't that, serious? Fun times, right? If you're interested, I wrote an essay about the surreal, grotesque reaction from US media and a lot of MAGA types to the Epstein Files revelations. It's got a fun title too, a play on the Neil Diamond song, Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon. You can find a link to that in the show notes. I published it at the 5 a.m. Story Talk newsletter, which I hope you're subscribed to because it's free. Maybe the piece will provide you some incendiary material for the fights you get into over the holidays. Now, do me a favor here. Talk to me in the comments at my newsletter or over at the 5 a.m. Story Talk Instagram about what you're thankful for this year. I'd love to hear the good, and I hope there was a lot of it. On my end, I can't lie. It's been a hell of a year for me, which I've alluded to in various ways on this podcast. Let's just say I've been at the breaking point for most of the year, and I am just grateful, so grateful, as a storyteller that I have an outlet for it outside of therapy or screaming into my pillow. Even this podcast has been an unexpected blessing, providing me a way to connect with you and other artists. I mean, I'm still shaken by my conversation with writer-director Scott Derrickson from a few weeks ago. Before I even hit record, we got into some of what's been going on in my life, and the guy's concern, his empathy was palpable. Maybe I'll never see him again, but that day he made a difference. Thanks again, Scott. All this said, what's also important to point out is that my wife and I have just had the best news we've had in probably half a decade. That good news I'll be telling you about soon, I'm guessing, but as vague as I'm being right now about it, it means I'm going into Thanksgiving and the festive season in general with a burden lifted off of me that's been slowly driving me into the ground for 9 years now. I feel good, even excited. And while maybe tomorrow something else messed up will happen, that'll leave me shaky again. Right now, I am thankful. So very, very thankful. Okay, enough of that. Let's talk art, and specifically two adaptations of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein that I watched in the same week. The first is this 1973 BBC film, really a two-part miniseries I didn't even know existed. One of my newsletter's amazing paid supporters, Aaron Clow, he suggested it, and wow, he did not steer me wrong here. It's written by Don Bashardi, I hope I got his name right, and Christopher Isherwood, and directed by Jack Smite. wonderful cast. Try to imagine a horror film presented through the haughty lens of British high culture. That cultured snobbery that dismisses anything, that doesn't scream serious drama. It has all the luridness, all the low budget design, all the sensational, exploitative violence of a Hammer production. You know, the horrors that starred the likes of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and Oliver Reed and Carolyn Monroe. Tim Burton has been riffing on them for years. So Frankenstein, the true story is all these things, but instead of being self-aware, like Hammer films, it's just super earnest, absolutely convinced it's a, serious drama. The thing is, it's a winning combination, even if a part of me is also infuriated by its existence, at least back in 1973. It was so clearly an attempt to cash in on the popular affection of the time for Hammer films from a cultural intelligentsia that otherwise regularly hated on such films. Even today, I can't bring up Hammer films to a British producer without fear of being judged. The consequence is, the whole production reeks of a kind of cultural hypocrisy, but it's also just amazing. I loved it. I'll drop a link to a YouTube version of the film in the show notes. The quality, it's not extraordinary, but I still very much enjoyed it. There was a time when we were okay with these imperfect viewing experiences, wrestling films out of the ether with the help of our rabbit ears. And for me, I still think there's some magic to that. But there's a new Blu-ray restoration of the film that you can find too. It's been out since 2023, I think. I'm told it's beautiful. The other Frankenstein film is, as I said, Guillermo del Toro's. It is a lush, beautiful film that has divided audiences, I find. The criticisms I've seen of it often revolve around its pace, but I'm going to dare to say that criticism is a commentary on the times and how audiences, even critics, have increasingly become bored with anything that doesn't move with the clip of YouTube videos. Things that involve a kind of poetry, and Frankenstein most certainly does. It moves with its own rhythm, indifferent to Hollywood norms, and I think that's why it got under my skin, unlike a lot of other Frankenstein adaptations. Its story of intergenerational trauma pulverized me too. This is a theme that I play a lot with in my work. My parents incurred a lot of trauma in their lives, and exploring that legacy is something I find meaningful and moving. So maybe I'm sucker built for this kind of story. But what Del Toro does with Victor von Frankenstein, it's next level, just powerful stuff. The victim becoming the victimizer, the abused child becoming the abused father, the desperate need of each generation to find a way to escape that cycle, but not always succeeding. All this is at play, coloring every scene with rage and pain, pathos, sadness. I think turning Victor into a tech bro is genius too. He creates with a kind of destructive abandon, blindly pursuing progress regardless of how many pay the price for his ambition and ego. All too willing to cast away his new toy when it doesn't fill whatever spiritual emptiness exists inside him. Should also mention Frankenstein's unique structure, which brings the creature to life in a way I've never seen on screen. I don't want to ruin it for you, but screenwriters, there's a lot to take from Frankenstein's bifurcated narrative, including how important it is to recognize the voices of victims at a time when we're so morbidly fixated on the perpetrators of pain and violence, from billionaires to serial killers, which are not, entirely different species. Long story short, if you're on the fence about seeing this film, know that I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I saw it. It's just lingering in the back of my mind. And I think that's the important takeaway here. Del Toro didn't make the Hollywood version of Frankenstein, even though he made it with a Hollywood budget. It's an odd, singular, deeply personal film that defies the rules and sticks with you. I imagine I'm going to love it even more when I see it a second time. I'm not done quite yet today, but I want you to know if you have any questions about anything we discuss, drop them into the comment sections on this article at Substack or the 5 a.m. StoryTalk podcast account at Instagram. If you enjoyed this ep of RealTalk, be sure to subscribe to 5 a.m. StoryTalk if you haven't already too. Paid subscriptions are available, which get you all kinds of bonus content. There's actually a Black Friday sale going on right now for subscriptions. 50% off for a year. Check the show notes for more on that. That support really helps keep these podcasts showing up in your life. As for the next episode of 5 a.m. RealTalk, it's coming your way in 2 weeks. 5 a.m. Story Talk, however, will be back in a few days with Australian musician Ben Lee as a guest. Ben was actually the second interview I ever conducted, back when I was a film music journalist. This was 20 years ago now, and he's written a brilliant new song called The Fall of America, which I used as an excuse to catch up with him and discuss the impact of Trump's second term on the American myth abroad. I'm going to leave you now with a quote, as I like to do. This one's from Madonna, and it goes, "I am my own experiment. I am my own work of art." So I think this is true about all of us as human beings, but it certainly speaks more to me as an artist. When we create, we are also constantly recreating ourselves. Our art doesn't just have the potential to change others, it changes us too. We are both the creator and the creature, which is, of course, what Frankenstein dramatizes, constantly at war, constantly trying to escape the cycle we were born into and yet cannot help but contribute to. Where are you in your cycles of creation and destruction, Story Talkers? Drop into those comments and tell me what's going on with your life and creative process if you want. Well, I think that's everything this week. I'll see you soon for some more 5 a.m. Story Talk. Until then, my friends, happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate. Remember, you don't have to spend it with abusers or anyone who doesn't believe your life or other lives matter as much as their bigotry and hatefulness. You're all amazing, and I hope whatever misery and drama they throw your way turns into something beautiful on the page or canvas or whatever other medium you create in.